Have you ever wondered what truly makes someone intelligent, especially when traditional measures might miss the mark? Welcome to CSS Breakdown, book by book, Season 07, Episode 12, where we unravel the complexities of intelligence from Atkinson and Hilgard's Introduction to Psychology 15th edition. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into one of psychology's most debated and, frankly, fascinating concepts: intelligence.
Definitely fascinating and debated.
Absolutely. We're going to explore what it means, how we've tried to measure it, the wildly different theories that try to explain it.
The whole nature versus nurture thing.
Exactly. The complex interplay between our genes and our environment, and even how we understand conditions at the lower end of the spectrum. All of this comes from a foundational text in cytology.
A classic text.
And to kick things off, consider this. Thomas Woodrow Wilson, 28th U.S. President, Nobel Peace Prize winner. A truly impactful figure.
Major historical figure.
Now, picture him as a child. Believe it or not, this future world leader struggled so much with reading that he didn't really get the hang of it until he was 10 or even 11 years old.
Wow, that late.
Yeah. And his college grades, not exactly stellar. Yet he went on to earn a law degree, a doctorate, became a respected author, president of Princeton University, governor of New Jersey, and of course led the U.S. through World War I.
Quite the resume, despite the early struggles.
So if someone with such early academic hurdles can achieve such immense success, what does that really tell us about what we mean when we say someone is intelligent?
That's a perfect story to begin with because, as you've highlighted, defining intelligence is arguably one of the most contentious and dynamic areas in psychology.
Contentious is right.
You see, how someone defines intelligence often reveals their underlying theory about what it truly is. Some argue it's simply whatever our tests measure a score, nothing more.
Just a number.
Right. But a more expansive view, and one we'll explore today, sees it as a broader human capacity. The ability to learn from experience, to think abstractly, and crucially, to deal effectively with your environment.
Dealing with the world around you.
Exactly. We'll unpack this tension and everything in between.
Okay, so if we're going to really understand intelligence, we absolutely have to start with how we try to measure it. Our society, in so many ways, relies on objectively assessing cognitive abilities.
School placements, admissions.
University admissions, yeah, even who gets a certain job. For all these practical applications, and certainly for rigorous scientific research, having measurements that are both reliable and valid is absolutely non-negotiable.
Precisely. Let's break those down. When we talk about reliability, we're asking, does a test consistently give you the same reproducible result?
Consistency. Got it.
Think of it this way. If you took the same test on 2 different days, would your score be roughly similar? That's retest reliability, sometimes called temporal stability.
Makes sense.
Or if there are different versions of a test, trials for future forms, do those equivalent forms yield comparable scores? That's alternative form reliability.
Okay, like different versions of the same test.
Exactly. We also look at internal consistency, meaning all the questions on a single test should ideally measure the same underlying concept. If certain questions don't really align, they're typically discarded to sort of purify the test.
Weeding out the bad questions.
Right. And for more subjective assessments, like grading an essay or, say, rating someone's aggression, we need inter-rater agreement, meaning multiple independent judges should largely agree on the score.
So everyone's on the same page.
Pretty much. For well-designed objective tests, we're looking for reliability that's usually 0.90 or even higher. That shows near perfect consistency.
That's very high.
It is. For subjective judgments, maybe a 0.70 might be okay for broad research trends, but you definitely want to tread carefully if you're making big decisions about an individual based on that score alone. Adding more judges, by the way, almost always increases that reliability.
Right. More perspectives smooth things out. So consistency is paramount. But what you just said really makes me think. A test could be super consistent, yet completely useless if it's not measuring what it claims to.
Exactly.
That brings us to validity, which is the absolute bedrock of good measurement. It's about whether a test actually measures what it's intended to measure.
The accuracy piece.
For instance, a psychology exam with incredibly tricky vocabulary might consistently give you the same score if you took it multiple times, so it's reliable.
Consistent scores.
But if those words obscure the actual course material, it's not a valid measure of your understanding.
Precisely. Validity is about accuracy. One key type is criterion or empirical validity. This is where test scores correlate with some external outcome or criterion.
Like predicting future performance.
Exactly. Imagine a university entrance exam. If the scores on that exam correlate strongly with students' first-year grades, that's evidence of its criterion validity.
Okay.
This is so critical that, legally, tests used for job selection must demonstrate a clear correlation with on-the-job performance.
It makes sense for fairness.
Then there's construct validity, which becomes vital when there isn't one obvious external true criterion to measure against. We call this the criterion problem.
So when there's no single gold standard.
Right. Instead, we see if the test scores align with predictions made by the underlying psychological theory itself. A classic example is McClellan's theory of achievement motivation.
Ah, I remember that.
Initially, the test only proved valid for entrepreneurial men, so the theory and the test had to be refined to apply to women as well. It's a continuous process, really, refining both the theory and the measurement.
Okay, so we know how to measure, focusing on reliability and validity. Now let's dig into the story of how we even started down this path of trying to quantify something as elusive as intelligence. Who are the pioneers?
Well, our story really begins in 1884 with Sir Francis Galton, Charles Darwin's cousin, actually.
Darwin's cousin. Interesting.
Yeah. Galton believed intelligence was largely inherited and could be improved through selective breeding, a concept known as eugenics, which, well, we now understand was deeply flawed and problematic.
Very problematic, yes.
He thought superior sensory and perceptual skills were the hallmark of intelligence. So he set up a lab, measured things like head size, reaction time, how well people could distinguish different sounds.
Physical and sensory stuff.
Right. His great disappointment was that he couldn't differentiate eminent scientists from ordinary citizens with these measures. Didn't work.
Huh. So that approach failed.
It did. But here's the fascinating nugget. His failure led to a monumental statistical invention, the correlation coefficient.
Ah, so something good came out of it.
Absolutely, a tool we still use constantly in research today.
Wow. Okay, so Galton didn't quite crack it. Who came next?
The real breakthrough for modern intelligence testing came from Alfred-Binet in France. The French government needed a way to identify children who were struggling in school.
For special education.
Exactly, for compulsory schooling. Binet wisely steered clear of purely sensory or perceptual motor tasks, unlike Galton. Instead, he focused on higher-order cognitive abilities, reasoning and problem-solving.
More like what we think of as thinking.
Precisely. This work led to his revolutionary concept of mental age. It characterized a child's mental abilities by comparing them to the typical abilities of children at different chronological ages.
So like saying a 6-year-old thinks like an average 8-year-old.
Exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
Later, Louis Terman adapted Binet's test for an American context, meticulously standardizing its administration and developing age-level norms. This became the famous Stanford-Binet intelligence scale.
The Stanford-Binet, I've definitely heard of that.
Oh yeah, it's a cornerstone. Terman also adopted William Stern's idea of the intelligence quotient, or IQ, calculated as mental age divided by chronological age multiplied by 100.
MA over CA times 100.
That's the one. So an IQ of 100 meant your mental age matched your chronological age. Scores above or below 100 indicated if your mental abilities were ahead or behind your actual age.
Simple enough concept.
Well, yes, but while we still use the term IQ score, modern tests like the Stanford-Binet no longer use this simple formula directly.
Well, they do.
No, they use complex statistical tables to assign standard age scores. This ensures they align with a bell-shaped curve distribution, where most scores cluster around the average, which is set at 100, and fewer appear at the extremes.
Ah, the bell curve. Okay.
Then came David Wechsler. In 1939, he developed the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, or WAIS. He felt the Stanford-Binet was maybe too focused on language and wasn't ideal for adults.
So he aimed for a broader adult test.
Exactly. His scales, and later the WISC for children, were groundbreaking for their structure. They separated intelligence into distinct verbal and performance sections.
Verbal and nonverbal.
Essentially, yes. Performance tasks are less language-dependent. This meant you'd get separate scores for each, plus subtest scores that could really pinpoint specific strengths or weaknesses, like maybe a reading disability.
That sounds really useful diagnostically.
It is. Both the Stanford-Binet and Wechsler scales show impressive reliability, hovering around 0.900.
Very consistent.
And a respectable validity, correlating around 0.5 or 0.50 with school achievement.
Okay, so they predict school success moderately well.
Moderately well, yes.
That's a deep dive into the historical origins of intelligence testing. It seems like we quickly moved towards tests that gave us a single number, an IQ score. But this immediately raises a fundamental question. Is intelligence truly one single overarching capacity, or is it actually a collection of many different independent abilities?
Ah, the million-dollar question. This is where the factorial approach in intelligence really gained traction. In 1904, Charles Spearman proposed his influential idea of a general intelligence factor, G.
G for general.
Right. He believed G underpinned all cognitive performance. So whether you were doing math, spatial reasoning, verbal tasks, G was the common thread. On top of that, he suggested special factors, unique to specific abilities.
So G plus some specific talents.
Kind of. Your intelligence, in his view, was a blend of your overall G plus these specific SES strengths.
Okay, Spearman and G.
However, Louis Thurstone, in 1938, wasn't convinced by the sole dominance of G. He used a statistical technique called factor analysis.
Factor analysis. That sounds complicated.
It can be, but simply put, it's like sifting through a huge pile of data to find hidden patterns or groups of abilities that tend to go together.
Finding underlying dimensions.
Exactly. Through this, he identified 7 primary mental abilities, like verbal comprehension or numerical ability.
So multiple factors, not just one G.
That was his argument. The fascinating twist here is that while his test was useful, its predictive power wasn't actually greater than general intelligence tests. And even his primary abilities weren't completely independent. They still showed some correlation.
Hinting that maybe G was still there after all.
Exactly. Kind of undermining his own point a bit. The biggest critique of this whole factorial approach is its inconsistency. Different researchers using factor analysis have identified anywhere from 20 to 150 factors.
20 to 150, that's a huge range.
It is. This raises serious questions about the approach's ultimate value in truly pinning down intelligence, even though factor analysis itself remains an incredibly important statistical tool in psychology.
So the factorial approach gave us one way to slice up intelligence, leading to debates about G versus multiple specific factors. But what if we looked at it differently? What if we zoomed in not on what the factors are, but how the brain actually processes information?
Exactly. That's where the next big shift in psychology took us, starting in the 1960s with cognitive psychology. This new wave of theories asked fundamental questions. What precise mental processes are involved when we engage in intelligent activities?
The how, not just the what.
Right. How quickly and accurately are these processes carried out? And what kind of mental representations are they operating on? It's about moving beyond what intelligence is composed of to how it actually works, step by step.
Okay, so process-based theories. Who are the key players here?
One of the most prominent is Howard Gardner and his theory of multiple intelligences. Gardner powerfully challenged the traditional narrow view of intelligence as purely logical or linguistic reasoning.
Yeah, the idea that there's more to being smart than book smarts.
Exactly. His definition of intelligence is wonderfully broad. The ability to solve problems or fashion products that are of consequence in a particular cultural setting or community.
Value in a specific context.
Right. He proposed 7 distinct intelligences initially, now more each, he argued, operating as a separate system in the brain. Linguistic, musical, logical mathematical, spatial, bodily kinesthetic, intrapersonal, understanding yourself.
Self-awareness?
And interpersonal, understanding others.
Social smarts.
His evidence comes from diverse sources. Brain damage sometimes affects only one type of intelligence. Different cultures value different intelligences, and individuals often show unique combinations of strengths.
Like someone being musically gifted, but maybe not great at math.
Precisely. The real takeaway here for you is that this theory helps explain why conventional IQ tests might not fully capture someone's potential for job success or life achievement. It argues for broader, more intelligence-fair assessments.
Beyond just paper and pencil tests.
Definitely. Then there's Anderson's theory of intelligence and cognitive development. Anderson looked at Gardner's ideas and suggested they were perhaps a bit too broad. Maybe the abilities weren't entirely independent.
A critique of Gardner.
A refinement, perhaps. His core idea is that individual differences in intelligence largely stem from varying speeds of a basic processing mechanism, essentially. How quickly and efficiently your brain can process information.
Brain speed, basically.
In a nutshell, yeah. He also introduced the concept of modules, universal automatic cognitive mechanisms hardwired into our brains. Think of how a person with Down syndrome might intuitively recognize others' beliefs, even if they struggle with simple math.
Innate abilities.
Right. These modules mature over time and explain developmental increases in abilities. Anderson also identifies specific abilities like propositional thought for language and math and visual spatial functioning. These are carried out by specific processors that are influenced by the basic processing mechanism's speed.
So processing speed affects specific skills.
Correct. He suggests two routes to knowledge. One through fast basic processing via specific processors, which explains individual differences in IQ, and another through the automatic use of modules, which explains developmental gains. It's a nuanced view.
It sounds like it tries to bridge individual differences in development.
It does, illustrated by cases like M.A., an autistic man with a high IQ and an extraordinary ability to detect prime numbers despite apparent damage to his linguistic module.
Fascinating case. Okay, who else?
Next, we have Robert Sternberg's triarchic theory. Sternberg really broadens our perspective, arguing that earlier theories were incomplete because they didn't fully account for the crucial roles of experience and context.
Adding real-world factors.
Exactly. His theory has three interconnected subtheories. The componential subtheory focuses on the actual thought processes. It identifies three types of components. First, metacomponents your analytical abilities.
Like planning and strategy.
Precisely. Planning, monitoring, evaluating your problem-solving efforts. Think of meticulously planning a Thanksgiving dinner. Then there are performance components, your creative abilities.
Doing the actual work.
Right, the actual execution of those plans and strategies, like a skilled mechanic efficiently fixing a car. And finally, knowledge acquisition components, your practical abilities.
Learning new things.
How you encode new information, combine it with what you already know, compare it, like committing chapter info to memory for an exam. Sternberg illustrates this with analogy problems.
Lawyer is to client as doctor is to
patient. Exactly. He highlights that highly intelligent people might take more time to initially encode the problem accurately, but then they are incredibly fast at comparing the attributes and solving it.
Interesting trade-off.
Then Sternberg's experiential subtheory explains how intelligence changes as you gain experience. What might be novel and difficult at first can become almost automatic with practice.
Learning curve effect.
And his contextual subtheory really emphasizes how our cognitive activity is about fitting into our environment. This can happen through three processes: adaptation, adjusting to surroundings; selection, choosing a different environment; or shaping, actively changing your environment.
Adapt, select, or shape, like dealing with a bad job.
Exactly. Adapt to it, find a new one, or try to change things where you are. For example, an unhappy spouse might first try to adapt, then decide to select divorce, or actively shape the marriage through counseling.
Provides options. Okay, one more.
Finally, Ceci's bioecological theory. This extends Sternberg's ideas, putting even greater emphasis on the surrounding context, and it's a profound impact on how we solve problems.
Even more focus on environment.
Yes. Ceci suggests we all have multiple cognitive potentials that are biologically based but are fundamentally shaped by the environmental challenges and opportunities we encounter. For him, context isn't just a backdrop, it's absolutely essential.
Context is everything.
It includes knowledge domains, personality, motivation, education, the whole package. He challenges the traditional notion that abstract thinking is somehow independent of the subject matter.
So intelligence isn't just abstract power.
He argues it's deeply tied to the knowledge we gain in specific domains. Think of a computer programmer. As their knowledge base grows, their performance becomes more intelligent within that domain.
Expertise as intelligence.
In a way, yes. He points to Lewis Terman's famous study of high IQ children, the termites, showing that their adult success was often more influenced by socioeconomic and historical factors than just their IQ alone.
Environment trumping IQ.
Influencing it significantly, yes. And a major longitudinal study by Samaroff vividly demonstrated that the more environmental risk factors a child faced, like lack of maternal education, maternal mental illness, minority status, large family size, the lower their IQ tended to be.
A cumulative risk effect.
Exactly, a clear dose-response relationship.
Wow, so we've gone from single factors to multiple intelligences to processing speeds, and now to complex interactions with our experience in our entire environment.
If there's one core takeaway from this section, what would it be?
The big picture is this. Our understanding of intelligence has moved far, far beyond a single fixed number. Gardner highlights its value in a cultural context. Anderson points to a basic processing mechanism. Sternberg integrates internal processes, experience, and context. And Ceci emphasizes how our cognitive potentials combine with a rich knowledge base.
Diverse perspectives.
But the profound meta-insight, I think, is that while we acknowledge a biological basis, all these contemporary theories underscore the immense and undeniable influence of our environment. It's a dynamic interplay. That's a powerful unifying thought. And speaking of interplay, let's tackle one of the most persistent and, let's be honest, often heated debates in the field: the role of genetics in intelligence. How much is nature versus nurture?
Ah, yes, the perennial question. This is where two critical concepts come into play: variance and heritability. Behavioral scientists use variance to quantify the individual differences we see in a trait within a specific population.
How much people differ?
Right. How much do people differ in height, or eye color, or IQ scores? Heritability then tells us the percentage of that variance, those differences that can be accounted for by genetic differences among individuals in that particular population.
Okay, percentage of differences due to genes.
Exactly. To make it concrete, imagine two classes taking the same exam. If we hypothetically control for study time, say, everyone studies for precisely 3 hours, the differences in scores in that class become less about study time and potentially more about other factors, maybe including genetic ones influencing learning ability. If we could magically control for all environmental factors.
Which we can't.
Right, which we can't. But if we could, any remaining differences in scores would then be due to genetic differences among the students.
Okay, that clarifies the concept. How do researchers actually estimate it?
A powerful method is comparing identical twins who share virtually 100% of their genes to fraternal twins who share, on average, about 50% of their genes, like regular siblings.
The classic twin study design.
Exactly. If identical twins are significantly more alike on a trait like IQ than fraternal twins, it strongly suggests a genetic component. Through numerous twin studies, the heritability of intelligence, as measured by IQ tests, is estimated to be quite high, typically ranging between, say, 60% and 80%.
60 to 80%. That sounds substantial.
It is. Even studies of identical twins reared apart, like the famous Minnesota study, consistently show remarkable similarities in IQ, further bolstering the role of genetics. However, and this is crucial even in these studies, environment still plays a significant role. They aren't perfectly identical in IQ.
Right, so genetics isn't the whole story, even with high heritability.
Listen.
Okay, 60 to 80% sounds pretty definitive for genetics. But I know that the concept of heritability is notoriously misunderstood. What are the key pitfalls or misconceptions people often fall into when they hear a number like that?
Excellent question, because these misunderstandings often fuel some really unproductive debates. Here are 3 crucial clarifications, maybe the most important things to remember about heritability.
Okay, lay them on us.
1. Heritability refers to a population, not an individual. If we say height has 90% heritability, it doesn't mean that 90% of your specific height is due to your genes.
It's not about me personally.
Correct. What it means is that 90% of the differences in height among individuals within a particular population are due to genetic differences within that group. It's about population-level variation, not your personal makeup.
Okay, population differences. Got it.
2. Heritability is not a fixed number. It's a statistic specific to a particular population at a particular time. Here's where it gets interesting. If the environmental variance decreases, say, everyone in a population suddenly receives identical nutrition and schooling.
Leveling the playing field environmentally.
Right. Then heritability can actually increase because environmental factors are contributing less to the differences you observe. The remaining differences are more likely to be genetic.
Wow, okay, so it can change.
It can change. And 3, high heritability does not mean a trait is unchangeable by the environment, nor does it tell us about the source of mean differences between groups. This is perhaps the most important point, especially in sensitive discussions.
Unchangeable, like height seems pretty fixed.
But think of the cornfield analogy. Imagine you have 2 sacks of genetically different corn seeds. You plant one sack, black seeds, in incredibly fertile field A, and the other sack, white seeds, in barren field B. Within each field, the differences in height are largely genetic.
Because the environment is uniform within each field.
Right. But the average height difference between field A and field B, that could be entirely environmental due to the difference in soil quality, even if the within-field differences are genetic.
So group differences could be environmental even if the trait is heritable within groups.
Precisely. This applies directly to IQ differences sometimes observed between ethnic groups. Within group variance could have a genetic component, but the average difference between groups can be entirely environmental. And even for a highly heritable trait like height, we've seen dramatic changes. Average height of Japanese men increased by over 3 inches between 1946 and 1982, largely due to improved nutrition.
Environmental change affecting a highly heritable trait.
Exactly. Similarly, average IQ scores have significantly risen across the globe over the past century, the Flynn effect. High heritability is about variance within a group at a point in time, not about the average level or whether a trait can be changed by environmental interventions.
That truly reframes the whole discussion around genetics and intelligence. It's much more nuanced than just a percentage. Okay, shifting gears slightly, let's explore a concept that's gained immense traction in recent decades. Emotional intelligence, popularized by Daniel Goleman, often seen as a key to health and success.
It absolutely is, and it adds a whole new dimension to our understanding of intelligence. Psychologists Mayer and Ceci laid out 4 critical components that define emotional intelligence, or EI.
Okay, what are they?
The first is the accurate perception and expression of emotions, both in yourself and in others.
Reading the room and yourself.
Exactly. Being able to read the agitation in a coworker's voice to avoid conflict, or recognizing your own anxiety, is the crucial first step to managing it. Empathy is part of this too.
Makes sense. Number 2.
The second component is the ability to access and generate emotions in the service of thinking and problem solving. How often do we say, "How do I feel about this?" when making a big decision like choosing a college major?
Using your gut feelings productively.
Kind of. Being able to tap into and even anticipate those feelings gives us valuable information for decision making. The third is understanding emotions and emotional meanings.
Knowing why you feel a certain way.
Precisely. This goes beyond just perceiving an emotion. It's about knowing why you feel it. For example, you might feel sad, but understanding that it's due to chronic sleep deprivation rather than, say, picking the wrong major can prevent you from making an unwise, impulsive change.
Understanding the source.
Nice.
Crucial. And the last one.
And finally, the fourth component is emotional regulation. The capacity to manage and appropriately regulate your emotions. This isn't about suppressing emotions or raging uncontrollably,
Finding the middle ground.
but about channeling them in healthy, constructive ways. Think about anger. How you channel it is critical not just for your relationships, but even for your physical health. Chronic hostile anger is linked to heart disease.
Wow. So managing emotions has physical health links too.
Definitely.
That's a really comprehensive framework for EI. It raises a fascinating question for me. Is emotional intelligence something you're born with, like maybe the traditional view of IQ, or is it something that can actually be learned and developed?
That's the hopeful news. There's substantial evidence that emotional intelligence is indeed teachable.
Really? You can learn it?
Yes. We see it in action. Many schools now have programs teaching anger management, aiming to reduce aggression, and these have shown positive results. In the corporate world, executive training often focuses on developing empathy and improving interpersonal skills.
Workplace training.
Psychotherapy techniques widely help people recognize, understand, and manage their emotions. That's a huge part of many therapies. Even in health contexts, cardiac patients learn anger and stress control techniques to improve their health outcomes. So yes, it appears that we can absolutely cultivate and improve our emotional intelligence.
That's genuinely good news. But like any concept that captures the public imagination, emotional intelligence also has its skeptics. Let's delve into the seeing both sides of this discussion. What's the case for EI being a distinct, important construct?
Absolutely. On the side supporting emotional intelligence, researchers like Mark A. Brackett and Peter Salovey argue that their ability model of EI fits perfectly within a broader, more nuanced view of intelligence overall.
Their 4-branch model.
Right. Perceive, use, understand, and manage emotions. They see it as hierarchical basic processes foundational to more advanced ones. A key point for them is how it's measured. Not by self-reports, which can be biased.
People aren't always accurate about themselves.
Exactly. But by performance tests like the MSCEIT, the Mayer-Salovey-Caruso Emotional Intelligence Test. These tests are validated by comparing scores to those of experts or large normative samples.
Objective measurement.
They try to be. And they point to clear correlations between MSCEIT scores and positive real-world outcomes. Individuals with higher EI tend to have better friendships, more satisfying relationships, lower rates of drug and alcohol use, less anxiety and depression,
Sounds pretty good.
and even greater success in the workplace, reflected in higher company rank, merit pay, positive supervisor ratings. They readily acknowledge that it's a relatively young field of research compared to IQ, but the evidence, they argue, is compelling.
Okay, that's a strong case. What about the critique? What are the main concerns?
Well, Chucklingham Viswesvaran offers a critical perspective, raising several important points. First, he highlights a significant definitional controversy. There's the ability model we just discussed, but also a mixed or trait model, which often blends emotional abilities with personality dispositions like optimism or assertiveness.
Two different ways of defining EI.
Right, and the problem is, measures of these two models show a very low correlation, around 0.12, even though both might predict outcomes. Viswesvaran argues we need far more rigorous factor analysis to truly delineate the boundaries of EI, figure out what it really is, separate from personality.
Untangling EI from personality.
Exactly, a process that general intelligence research took decades to achieve. He also contends that EI currently lacks the robust, extensive evidence of criterion-related validity that general intelligence research boasts. Fewer studies, less certainty in its predictive power across different situations.
Needs more validation research.
And on construct validity, he notes insufficient research clearly articulating why EI relates to outcomes. Unlike general intelligence, where we have models suggesting it leads to higher job knowledge, which then leads to better performance, the causal pathway for EI is less well established theoretically.
We don't fully know the how.
The mechanisms aren't as clear. Viswesvaran also raises practical concerns about using EI tests in high-stakes situations, like job selection. For example, there's concern about adverse impact, whether tests might unfairly disadvantage certain groups.
Fairness issues.
Also, most studies rely on student samples, so the generalizability to real-world job applicants is questionable. There's also limited research on predictive bias or cross-cultural equivalence. What constitutes appropriate emotion regulation can vary significantly across cultures, for instance.
Cultural differences matter.
Hugely. Finally, and perhaps most critically, he powerfully questions the incremental validity of EI. For it to be a truly distinct and useful construct, it needs to explain a significant amount of performance variance beyond what general intelligence and well-established personality factors, like the Big Five, already predict.
Does it add anything new to prediction?
That's the question. He notes that very few studies have convincingly shown this, leading to the concern that emotional intelligence, while intriguing, might simply be old wine in a new bottle, just repackaging existing constructs without adding substantial new predictive power.
A tough critique. It really highlights the need for more research.
Absolutely. It's a field still very much in development.
Okay, that's a crucial debate, reminding us to always look critically at new psychological concepts. So on one end, we've explored incredibly nuanced cognitive and emotional abilities. Now, let's shift our focus to the other end of the intelligence continuum. General learning disability.
Right. General learning disability, which was previously known as mental retardation, is defined by two primary criteria. First, an IQ score that is significantly sub-average, typically under 70 on standard tests.
Below 70 IQ.
But, and this is critical, it's not just about the score, it must also involve significant problems in performing daily life tasks. Adaptive functioning, we call it.
So challenges in coping with life demands.
Exactly. This means challenges in areas like communication, self-care, social skills, using community resources, self-direction, academic or work skills, leisure activities, and maintaining health and safety. Both low IQ and adaptive deficits are required for the diagnosis.
Got it. It's a dual criterion.
Yes. And the condition spans a wide spectrum, categorized into 4 levels of severity based largely on adaptive functioning, though IQ ranges are associated.
Okay, what are the levels?
Mild general learning disability, typically associated with IQ 50 to 69, means individuals often need minimal self-care help, have average motor skills, can learn simple communication and writing. With special education and support, they can achieve a good degree of self-sufficiency, often holding unskilled jobs. About 85% fall into this category.
The largest group capable of significant independence.
Yes. Moving to moderate, IQ roughly 35-49, individuals often have significant language delays, maybe only 4-10 words by age 3. They may be physically clumsy and have only rudimentary academic skills. While they can learn simple vocational tasks, they might not be able to travel, shop, or cook independently.
More support needed.
Definitely. Then severe IQ, roughly 20-34, means very limited vocabulary, often just 2 to 3 word sentences and significant motor deficits. They might learn to feed and dress with simple clothing, but cannot travel alone or handle complex tasks like shopping or cooking. They might manage some unskilled manual labor in highly supervised settings.
Requires considerable supervision.
Yes. Finally, profound, IQ generally below 20, requires continuous, full-time custodial care. These individuals often cannot dress themselves completely, have very limited social interaction, and usually develop a vocabulary of only a few hundred words as adults, if that. They also tend to experience more frequent illnesses and often have a shorter life expectancy.
A very challenging level of disability. That's a stark picture of the challenges individuals can face across the spectrum. What causes these conditions? Is it always genetic, or are there environmental factors that contribute significantly?
It's a complex interplay, really. Both biological and sociocultural factors contribute and often interact. On the biological side, genetic transmission plays a role. We see higher rates of intellectual problems in some families, though specific genes are often hard to pinpoint except in known syndromes.
Inherited factors.
Right. We also see specific metabolic disorders like phenylketonuria or PKU. This is an inability to metabolize a specific amino acid. If it's caught early through newborn screening, which is standard now in many places, it can be effectively treated with dietary changes, preventing severe learning disability.
A success story for early detection and intervention.
Absolutely. Then there's Tay-Sachs disease, a devastating nervous system degeneration, typically fatal by age 6, primarily affecting individuals of certain genetic backgrounds like Ashkenazi Jewish populations.
Tragic genetic disorders.
Yes. Chromosomal disorders are another significant biological cause. Down syndrome, or trisomy 21, having an extra copy of the 21st chromosome, occurs in about 1 in 800 births. It causes mild to profound disability and, interestingly, brain abnormalities later in life that resemble Alzheimer's disease.
Down syndrome is quite well known.
It is. Fragile X syndrome, where the tip of the X chromosome is fragile and prone to breaking, is another leading inherited cause of severe to profound disability, particularly in males, often presenting with characteristic physical features, speech, and social deficits.
Okay. Genetic and chromosomal issues are clear biological factors. What about before birth?
The prenatal environment is absolutely critical. Maternal infections during pregnancy, like rubella, herpes, or syphilis, can damage the developing brain. Chronic maternal disorders, such as high blood pressure or diabetes, if poorly managed, can also pose risks.
Maternal health is key.
And especially exposure to drugs or toxins. For instance, cocaine use during pregnancy restricts oxygen and blood flow to the fetus. And alcohol. Substantial maternal alcohol intake can lead to fetal alcohol syndrome, FAS.
FAS, I've heard about that.
It's a major preventable cause. The text presents the tragic case of Abel Doris. Born to a mother who drank heavily, his IQ was around 68, but perhaps more devastating were his profound difficulties with judgment, distractibility, understanding social cues, and an inability to learn from experience, leading to repeated trouble with the law.
A lifetime of challenges caused by prenatal exposure.
Exactly. And it's important to note, even low to moderate drinking during pregnancy may have subtle but potentially lasting negative effects on cognitive development. There's likely no known safe amount.
A crucial public health message. Okay, those are biological and prenatal causes. What about after birth, the environment the child grows up in?
Shifting to the sociocultural side, yes, environmental factors play a huge role, particularly poverty. Children from low socioeconomic backgrounds face a significantly higher risk of general learning disability, though it's usually in the mild range.
Why is poverty such a risk factor?
It's often a confluence of factors. Parents might themselves have learning disabilities and fewer resources. There might be inadequate prenatal care, higher exposure to environmental toxins like lead paint in older housing, attendance at poorly funded and resourced schools, receiving less favorable attention from teachers, and often less parental time or resources for activities that foster reading and academic development, like reading together or having educational toys.
A complex web of disadvantage.
It truly is. Malnutrition can also play a role. It's rarely one single thing, but an accumulation of risk factors.
Given these profound challenges and the varied causes biological, prenatal, sociocultural, What kinds of interventions or treatments are available? And crucially, how effective are they?
Well, ideally, interventions for general learning disability begin as early as possible, often at birth, and offer comprehensive lifelong support tailored to the individual's needs.
Early and ongoing support.
Yes, behavioral interventions are a cornerstone. These are designed to teach new skills, everything from identifying colors or using money to specific vocational training, often using techniques like modeling, breaking tasks down, and positive reinforcement. They are also highly effective at reducing maladaptive behaviors that can interfere with learning and socialization, like aggression or self-injury.
Practical skill building and behavior management.
Right. Meditations are also sometimes used not to treat the underlying learning disability itself, but to manage associated conditions that can co-occur, such as seizures, severe aggression, self-destructive behaviors, or symptoms of depression or anxiety.
Managing associated problems.
Exactly. But where we see some of the most profound impacts, especially for preventing or lessening the severity of disability linked to environmental risk, is through comprehensive early interventions.
Like Head Start programs.
Similar in principle, but often even more intensive. The text highlights the Infant Health and Development Program, specifically designed for low birth weight infants who are at higher risk. This was a really intensive program.
How did it involve?
It involved regular home visits by counselors who taught parents positive parenting practices that fostered cognitive and social development. Children also attended special child development centers with highly trained teachers and low child-to-staff ratios. And there were robust parent support groups.
Multi-pronged approach, home, center, and parent support.
Exactly. The results were truly significant. Children in the intervention group had substantially higher IQ scores at 36 months, up to 13 points higher on average for the heavier low birth weight infants compared to controls, and also exhibited fewer behavioral and emotional problems.
13 points. That's a huge difference.
It's a very meaningful difference. While some of the behavioral benefits tended to diminish over time if the intervention didn't continue, the cognitive benefits, especially for the heavier low birth weight children, persisted for years, even at follow-ups at 60 and 96 months.
So the cognitive gains lasted longer.
Yes. It powerfully underscores that early, intensive, and comprehensive interventions can truly mitigate the severity of disability associated with environmental risk factors and dramatically improve long-term developmental outcomes.
That's incredibly important work. What an incredible journey we've taken today, really unraveling the complexities of intelligence, from the surprising story of Woodrow Wilson, who defied early academic struggles,
A great starting point.
to the intricate science of IQ tests, the multitude of theories attempting to define it, that fascinating dance between our genes and our environment, and the profound challenges and, thankfully, effective interventions for learning disabilities. It's crystal clear that intelligence is far more multifaceted and dynamic than any single score could ever capture.
Absolutely. And it's so vital to remember, as Gardner and others emphasize, that what one culture champions as intelligent can differ dramatically from another.
Right, the cultural lens is huge.
Think of the concept of ingwer in Zimbabwe, which emphasizes social prudence and cautious wisdom, or the extensive knowledge of herbal medicine held by elders in rural Kenyan communities. That's highly intelligent behavior in that context. Among the Yupik Eskimos in Alaska, mastery of complex hunting, fishing, and navigation skills is paramount for survival and respect.
Different skills valued in different places.
Exactly. This cultural context even shapes how people interpret and respond to standardized intelligence tests, which often reflect Western academic values. Remember the example from the text about the Central Asian farmers, when given a classic logical syllogism?
The all bears in the north or white type.
Right. They refused to answer based purely on the premises if they hadn't directly observed white bears in the north themselves. While technically incorrect by the test's abstract reasoning rules, their response perfectly followed their cultural norm of only stating firsthand knowledge. It wasn't about lack of logic, but about different rules for using knowledge.
That really drives home the challenge of creating genuinely culture-fair tests.
It's an immense ongoing challenge. True fairness is incredibly difficult to achieve.
It truly puts it all into perspective. Given this incredibly multifaceted nature of intelligence, then, and how deeply cultural context shapes its very definition and its value, how might our societies need to fundamentally rethink education and career pathways? How can we truly nurture and recognize the full spectrum of human abilities, rather than continuing to rely so heavily on narrow, often culturally bound measures like traditional IQ or standardized test scores?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? Moving beyond the single number.
Something to ponder for your own deep dive.